Russia once joked that NASA should use a trampoline to reach the ISS. Now their Soyuz launch facility is destroyed, and they can't fly their own crews anymore. Instead of payback, NASA ramped up SpaceX Dragon missions, delivering cargo to Russian modules and rotating cosmonauts. It's brilliant strategy wrapped in cooperation. Why help when you could walk away? Is Russia planning to leave the ISS sooner than expected? Let's dive right in. November 27, 2025 started like any other day at Baikonur Cosmodrome. Then everything changed. Launch Site 31, the only facility capable of sending Soyuz spacecraft to the ISS, suffered catastrophic damage. The details remain classified, but the impact is crystal clear. Russia's primary access to space just went dark. Roscosmos moved fast to control the narrative. Deputy Director Dmitry Baranov appeared confident, almost casual. The repair kit had arrived. Work would begin December 1st. Launch operations would resume by late February 2026. Everything under control. But here's what they didn't say. Nearly a month has passed since that announcement, and there's been radio silence. No updates, no progress photos, no revised timeline. Industry insiders are now whispering a very different story. This isn't a few months of downtime. We're looking at potentially 2 years before Soyuz flies again. 2 years without crew rotations, 2 years without progress cargo ships, 2 years of Russia essentially grounded while the ISS keeps orbiting overhead. What does that actually mean for the station? Here's where SpaceX enters the picture, and NASA's response becomes fascinating. Russia never formally asked for help. Pride runs deep in the Russian space program, but NASA didn't wait for a request. They saw the writing on the wall and acted preemptively. Within weeks, 2 upcoming cargo Dragon missions got pulled forward. CRS-34 moved from June to May 2026. CRS-35 jumped from November to August 2026. These aren't just supply runs. They're compensating for lost progress vehicles that would normally deliver propellant and reboost the ISS orbit. Think about what's happening here. The same Dragon spacecraft that ended NASA's dependence on Russia is now keeping Russia's segment of the station alive. The irony is almost poetic, but there's more. NASA just announced the crew lineup for SpaceX's Crew 12 mission, scheduled for February 2026. 4 seats. One of them belongs to Russian cosmonaut Andrei Fedyaev, who previously flew on Crew 6 back in 2023. This is part of the cross-flight agreement between NASA and Roscosmos, a seat-sharing arrangement that's supposed to ensure redundancy. But redundancy only works when both sides can actually fly. Right now, with Baikonur's launch site damaged, Russia can't conduct independent Soyuz flights. That means Russian crew rotations are completely dependent on American missions. Under normal circumstances, Russia gets 1 seat per Dragon flight. But what happens when that's their only option? Do they renegotiate? Ask for more seats per mission? And here's the uncomfortable part for Russian cosmonauts. Soyuz lands in Kazakhstan, on Russian-controlled territory. Dragon splashes down off Florida or in the Pacific. That means every Russian flying on Dragon returns to American soil first, then travels home by conventional means. Not exactly the triumphant return they're used to. Some analysts are speculating Russia might try to purchase an entire dedicated Crew Dragon flight. A full Russian crew, fully Russian-funded. Setting aside years of political tension just to maintain access to the station they helped build. But would SpaceX agree? And if they do, would the ticket price suddenly triple or quadruple, exactly like Russia did when NASA had no other choice? Let's rewind to 2011. When the space shuttle retired, NASA became completely dependent on Soyuz. Russia held all the cards and they played them aggressively. Seat prices jumped from $20 million per astronaut to $50 to $70 million per seat. Moscow made hundreds of millions from American necessity. Then came 2014, Crimea, sanctions, and Dmitry Rogozin, Russia's deputy prime minister overseeing space operations, fired off that infamous tweet suggesting America use a trampoline to reach the ISS. The world laughed. It sounded arrogant, but it also sounded true. At that moment, Russia really did have complete control. Elon Musk responded calmly on Twitter, Sounds like this might be a good time to unveil the new Dragon Mk2 spacecraft that SpaceX has been working on with NASA. No trampoline needed. People dismissed it as banter, just another tech billionaire talking big. But 6 years later, in May 2020, SpaceX launched Crew Dragon with 2 NASA astronauts aboard, the first crewed orbital launch from American soil in 9 years. After the mission, Elon smiled at the press conference and said simply, "The trampoline is working." The space Cold War seemed over. It wasn't. In 2022, after Russia invaded Ukraine, Western sanctions came down hard. Rogozin retaliated by cutting off RD-180 and RD-181 rocket engine sales to the United States. He went on Russian state TV and declared, "We cannot supply the United States with the world's best rocket engines anymore. Let them fly on something else, on broomsticks for all I care." What Rogozin missed or chose to ignore was that SpaceX didn't use Russian engines. Falcon 9 runs on American-built Merlin engines. Crew Dragon doesn't need Russian hardware at all. Elon posted a Falcon 9 launch video with a one-line caption, "American broomstick." The insult became a badge of honor. And now here we are. The trampoline works. The broomstick flies. And Russia is quietly relying on both to keep their cosmonauts in orbit. So why is NASA still helping? Given the history, why not let Russia struggle? The answer isn't generosity, it's cold strategic calculation. The ISS is a $150 billion interdependent system deliberately designed so no single partner can operate it alone. Russia controls propulsion, orbital reboost, debris avoidance, and attitude control. Without Russian systems, the ISS risks orbital decay or loss of maneuvering capability. Meanwhile, the US and its partners provide the majority of power generation and life support. If the ISS is going to survive until 2030 as planned, cooperation isn't optional, it's mandatory. Helping Russia isn't altruism, it's self-preservation. A food shortage or propellant gap on the Russian segment doesn't just hurt Russia, it threatens the entire station. That's why NASA accelerated those Dragon cargo missions. The cross-flight agreements already account for this scenario. If one partner suffers a failure, the other steps in. This redundancy kept the ISS alive after the Columbia disaster in 2003. Even if SpaceX personally wanted nothing to do with Russian cosmonauts, they can't opt out. These arrangements are institutional, binding, and designed to protect the station above all political considerations. There's something else NASA understands that goes beyond engineering. Completely isolating Russia risks pushing Moscow closer to Beijing. China's Tiangong space station is already operational. If Russia pivots entirely toward Chinese partnership, it reshapes the global balance of power in space, and the United States would struggle to compete alone against that combined capability. So cooperation continues, not out of forgiveness, but necessity and foresight. On July 31, 2025, something remarkable happened. Roscosmos head Yuri Borisov met face-to-face with NASA Acting Administrator Jim Free at Kennedy Space Center. It was the first direct top-level leadership meeting in nearly 7 years, frozen since Crimea in 2014 and completely iced after 2022. They discussed extending the cross-flight agreement, continuing ISS operations through 2030, and exploring future areas of cooperation. The fact this meeting happened at all signals both sides understand what's at stake. But could Russia use this crisis as an excuse to exit the ISS early? On the surface, it might seem tempting. Cut losses, redirect resources toward their planned Russian Orbital Service Station, or ROSS. The reality, extremely unlikely. First, Russia is actively trying to fix the Soyuz pad. Reports indicate over 130 workers are assigned to round-the-clock repair shifts at Baikonur. If Moscow truly intended to abandon the ISS, why pour manpower into repairs? They'd be building Ross infrastructure instead. And Ross itself is the second problem. Announced in 2022, the first module isn't expected to launch until 2027 or 2028 at the earliest, with full completion pushed into the early 2030s. Even those dates are optimistic. The project remains largely on paper, hampered by budget constraints and unresolved technical challenges. Leaving the ISS too soon creates a catastrophic gap. Russia would lose years of operational experience in long-duration spaceflight. Experience needed to train cosmonauts before Ross becomes functional. That would severely weaken Russia's position in orbit, especially while China operates a fully functional station right now. Here's what this moment really tells us. SpaceX didn't just break NASA's dependence on Russia, they've completely flipped the script. The country that once mocked America for having no way to reach orbit is now quietly relying on Dragon to keep their cosmonauts flying and their station segment operational. That's not revenge, that's reality catching up. But NASA's decision to help reveals something deeper about how space actually works in 2025. Politics create headlines. Engineering creates constraints. When you've invested $150 billion in a station that only functions when everyone cooperates, grudges become luxuries you can't afford. Russia can't leave early because Ross won't be ready for years. NASA can't walk away because the ISS would collapse without Russian propulsion systems. SpaceX can't refuse because cross-flight agreements are binding. Everyone's locked in until 2030, whether they like it or not. The trampoline comment became a prophecy Rogozin never intended. Dragon didn't just work, it became essential. Even for Russia, the broomstick flies cargo that keeps Russian modules pressurized and stocked. And the brilliant solution? It's not technology. It's recognizing that in space, survival beats pride every single time. What started as Cold War-style insults ended with the ultimate irony, Russia needing the very capability they once ridiculed. What do you think happens when Russia's launch pad is finally repaired? Will they remember this moment or pretend it never happened? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If this breakdown gave you a new perspective on what's really happening 250 miles above us, hit that like button and share this with anyone following the space industry. And subscribe to Space Update 24 Hours. We're tracking every development as SpaceX, NASA, and Russia navigate the most complex partnership in human history. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.